Hey everybody, it's Schiff from Birthing of Giants, Chairman of the Board of Experts, and I'm here with one of our great faculty members, Eric Krucke, who's joining us from the Georgia area today, where he lives and loves and runs his empire. You have met Eric in the past, those of you who have been on our other live streams. Eric joins us with a really amazing background of having done something that we've all only ever imagined, which is to have been part of a company that was bought by Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway, and to have helped build that company, then go through the transaction with the Berkshire Hathaway organization, and then continue to build that organization inside the Berkshire Hathaway organization, and to see how that obviously storied wealth creation enterprise helps one of the companies which he ran. Getting to know Eric and shared with him a bit about how Birthing of Giants is approaching development in the entrepreneur community. And he said something which was music to my ears, which he said, "This reminds me a lot of what we did at Berkshire Hathaway." And I thought, that's pretty cool. And then the next thing was to ask him to join us. So, hi, Eric. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, great to be here and spend more time together.
Yes, sir. I'm going to ask for our presentation to be brought up here. And what I'd love to talk with you, Eric, today is it's called The Birthing of Giants, 6 Steps to a Bigger Business. And you can see it on your screen, and that's what it says there in that first set of squares, 6 Steps to a Bigger Business. And when I said Eric looked at what we did and said, hey, this reminds me of what we did at Berkshire Hathaway, it's the 6 steps to a bigger business. But I asked Eric today to spend time on the center square. So I'm going to breeze through squares 1 and 2. Square 1, we call it PREP, profits, revenues, and exit prices. It is the thing on the mind of every business owner. And it's really not that hard for us to look at where you, the business owner, are at any given time. After all, we're easing into the next year right now. And it makes perfect sense for every business owner to say, what do I want to get done next year? And most of those questions end with something that'll affect profits, revenues, and exit prices. And so we like to start there too in our 6 steps to a bigger business. I'm going to breeze through these so I can get to the fun part with Eric. The next one is we call the 3-legged stool, which is essentially that every business is some unique combination of labor, technology or technique, and cash, how money moves through the process. And it's really, the reason we find this really interesting is we have folks who will say, is Birthing of Giants right for me because I'm in this industry and I think I need to be in a room with people who are in that industry. And we'll always say, every business is labor, tech, and cash. And if you think about it, a lot of people live inside an echo chamber. I'm going to ask you to reflect on this, Eric. So let's say you're in IT services, just as an example, and you say, well, I want to be in a group with other people in IT services, which I totally understand. I mean, I would always tell a business owner they should at least be very aware of what's happening in their industry through associations, et cetera. The challenge with only or mostly listening to your own industry when it comes to value proposition transformation, which is the fancy way of saying, how do I deliver value to my clients, is you only ever hear the other ideas that are being batted about in that industry, and you miss the chance to hear how other industries are going at the same thing, the same concept of value proposition transformation. The best example I can think of off the top of my head would be Blockbuster. Everyone at Blockbuster said, we rent videotapes. And everyone in the video industry said, we rent videotapes. And then all of a sudden, somebody like Netflix came around and said, actually, we're going to stream. You've got to get out of your echo chamber and see how other industries are operating so that you can be the transformer inside your industry. Eric, I'm curious if you have a reflection on the difference between someone saying, hey, if I'm in IT, I should mostly learn from other IT companies versus the merits of saying, maybe I should learn from people outside my industry.
Oh, yeah. I think for me, the greatest benefit has been when I spend time in other industries or with people in other disciplines, because it forces me to think beyond my typical framework of solving problems or even perceiving value. So for me, the frameworks and then the examples that can come from external views much more powerful than internal or in just the same industry where we're basically repeating each other's former success.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is one of those moments, and I've had the great fortune of being around this a lot, is the person who does think, okay, I'm in this industry, I need to hear from this industry. And then they hear something from the person next to them in the Birthing a Giants experience, who's in a totally different industry. And then they're like, I can't believe the idea I got from that industry or that person. And we're like, yeah, that's how you open it up, and then they have that moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's get to the fun part, which is what we call the four levers inside our Birthing a Giant's 6 steps to a bigger business. And Eric is an expert in all four of these. And so I thought, Eric, if you could just walk us through, you've worked with a lot of companies
Yeah.
to manage all four of these levers. And in our experience, in your experience, these are the levers that move a company forward, right? You get these four right. You don't always take all four on at the same time. You focus on one, but inevitably leads to the other, and then the other, and the other, and then sometimes you circle back to the first. And I'm not sure the order of which one you take on first matters. You can give me your thoughts on that. But these are the four levers. And if you're sitting there thinking about the next year, the next 3 to 5 years of your company, I do think a lot of it really gets bucketed into these four categories of change. Tell us a bit about all the work you've done around 4Ms and what you've learned along the way.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to kind of jump into one of Warren Buffett's quotes what I love, which is he says, it doesn't matter what you think. And that's the starting point. I think that's the starting point for contemplating value. And as we are building a business or helping someone else build a business where the value is growing, so that at some point when there is a potential transition or sale, they have a business that's sellable. Whether they're going to sell it or not, they want to be growing a valuable business. So value is defined by outside parties. And so that's the crux of what Warren's trying to focus our thought life on, which is you got to get out, and I love showing a picture of Warren reading newspapers in his office. I mean, who reads newspapers anymore? But this is the greatest investor of all time, who arguably has been in the market longer than most people. I mean, it's by now it's 70 plus years in the market, right? And gets up every morning and is consuming market information, as compared to me and many, people I know, we just don't spend the time doing that. So I love starting with the market view and just setting the table for, where's value defined? And it's really, if you think of this first M, money, the capital market, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the value of a business is defined by its future cash flows, okay? But in the eyes of a likely buyer, in the people that would be needed for us either to sell our business or to raise capital to grow it. So the capital markets are really, really important, and how they think about our business is incredibly important. And
do you mind if I ask you a little bit about that? Now, I'm talking about the lower middle market, which is where you and I spend a lot of time. So we're talking about a company with, let's say, $5 million to $500 million in revenue.
mm-hmm.
And a lot of those business owners of those kinds of companies, when I meet them, they will proudly say, I have no debt, which is, by the way, a wonderful place to be. And obviously has a lot to do with, we famously say, can you sleep at night? And companies with less debt or no debt can sleep at night. However, it has been made clear to me by the time I've spent with the capital markets men and women that having no debt when you can borrow money reasonably is a little like having people who work in your office but don't have anything to do. It's sort of like you can borrow $1 million, but you've chosen not to because you want to have no debt. But now that capacity to borrow $1 million to deploy to grow the business is untapped. And that would be no different than if you said, I've got 5 people in my office. I just keep sitting there just in case I need people. I have $1 million of credit I can tap into, but I'm not tapping into it. Maybe I'm not explaining it perfectly, but what do you think about comparing untapped capital to untapped human capital?
Yeah. Wow. So I think this fits perfectly in the concepts as we even think about one of the other M's too, which is management. We are very guilty in this space of, we said 5 million to 100 million in revenue, of underinvesting in the talent of our team. And it's a great example of where we're choosing to cling to one, the people that have got us there, but two, to our own capital, right? We in our unwillingness to raise capital, and debt is a great example of very good capital because it's not dilutive. It's not going to reduce your ownership percentage, but the debt tool, it's just a vehicle, is just another way to help accelerate growth and accelerate value, because the management team that we have to have for future success is not the same management team or talent that we had to get to this point. And so using capital, whether it's debt or growth equity in some cases, is vital to making sure we're making the right investments. The other way I love to think about us not using capital well or debt well is time is our best friend, but it's also our enemy. And if we take too much time, we're putting at risk the window that we have for the success of our industry or our solution. The other is, let's think of it more positively. The faster we grow and improve our outflows of cash, or the cash flow that we're generating, the faster we grow and become more profitable, the more exponentially valuable the asset we've created. So time will work against us. So if we wait, we're not just going to wait to generate that level of cash. We've waited and lost an opportunity to grow at an accelerated pace, which is, depending on how you want to think about your business,
right?
A scalable business versus one that we are just nurturing along the way. And those are two very different businesses with very different outcomes.
Right. And that's always about appetite and ambition and
Yep.
risk profile.
Yep.
Absolutely. And totally understandable. And by the way, and I know you and I have spent time with a lot of business owners where they've decided that they don't want, I guess people sort of think, well, the only other alternative to me trying to grow it at 15 or 20 or 25 or 30% a year is the other thing is supposed to be some sort of, rocket ship technology company, some sort of AI, whatever. Of course, there's many, many steps in between, but the capital markets do have this incredible sort of clarity on, are you making the most with what you have, right? And then they apply a multiple based on how much they believe you, how much they believe in that story.
Yeah.
I almost like a PSA. I like to tell people now more often, because the lower middle market business owner, the owner of a modest sized business, has now learned the word multiple. Over the last 10 years, they've learned this word multiple, but most of them don't actually know that multiple is the multiplier of the number of years of profit that if it's multiple profit, that they're willing to give you in advance. So if you can get your multiple up from a 7 multiple to an 8 multiple, the real sentence is, the capital markets, or the buyer of my company, was willing to give me 1 more year's worth of profits, from 7 years to 8 years.
That's it.
Because they believe my story or the clarity of it. That's what that multiple means.
Yeah.
And so the better you can absorb the lessons of the capital markets and then reflect them in your business model, right?
Yeah.
The more your multiple goes up.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's it. Absolutely. And as someone who wants to potentially invest in your business or lend you money, we want to raise their confidence level, which is reducing their risk. And if we can get them confident, then they're going to be more confident in what our ability to generate more than we're even forecasting. So confidence and risk is key.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've learned this from hanging out with folks like you, Eric, because my history is I'm an entrepreneur. I'm just trying to build, grow. And then the capital markets people taught me this word, which is the word de-risk.
That's it.
But it's like a religion to them, de-risk. And all of a sudden, build, and grow. Of course, super important.
Yeah.
But de-risk becomes this new prism through which you look at every decision you make.
Yeah.
And even though the word de-risk is intuitively understandable, the ways that you de-risk, that's really taught to us by the capital markets. They have taught us what de-risking means. Do you agree or disagree with that?
No, it's 100%. Cash is going to flow towards assets and businesses where the likelihood of what happens. Capital comes into something, and there's two things they always want back. One, they want their money back, and two, they want a return. And so they're looking at the confidence they have in both those things happening in the time frame that they've decided they want to make an investment. Right. So risk is everything. And by the way, my two favorite 4-letter words that I love for every business owner to be screaming, but even more importantly, their team members always talking about, and always, I license these two 4-letter words: risk and cash. They're the two main drivers of value that we want everyone on our team obsessing about.
So talk a bit about financial models, or what we call model.
Yeah. So here, when we think about the model, I always like to think about it's the manner in which we're generating a profit. It's the business model. It's how do we establish the path to solve a problem for our client, and we've identified the problem. We've built a whole mousetrap around solving that problem, doing it at a value level where we're going to get paid handsomely, right? I always love a business that we can say that we're going to get paid handsomely for what we're giving. And so, but that financial model can look different. And that problem can be solved in many ways. And so the model, as we look at our business, is the solution to driving a business value up is to create a model where we're increasing the value to our client or to our customer, okay, and not just solving perhaps one of the problems or a problem, but we're coming at it maybe from a different direction. So we want to always look strategically at our business model and the financial model. I always say follow the cash. It's the simplest way to look at what cash am I consuming, using, what time am I consuming and using, which, by the way, is another form of cash or resource, right? So how are we bringing cash into our business? How are we deploying it? In what ways are we, setting it out to be consumed and used so that we're solving this problem exceptionally well with the lowest amount of risk possible? It's back to, I love the word flawless execution. And so we want to look at our business and optimize it and de-risk our current model at a minimum. But we also want to take a hard look at another way to potentially solve a problem, or a problem adjacent to the one we were used to solving. So,
and this is, sorry, go ahead.
No,
yeah. Well, I was saying, this is kind of harkens back to what we were just talking about.
Yep.
In my example of being an IT company, and you say I need to learn from other IT companies. This is a good example of, you can learn other models, financial business models from totally different industries, apply it to yours, and all of a sudden have a breakthrough that literally generates more cash with less risk.
Yep.
because there's so many other companies and entrepreneurs out there saying, well, what if I did it this way? What if I did it that way? And so that the applicability of those to your business, like the model doesn't really care if you sell flowers or pebbles. If the model works, the model works and can be possibly applied to your business model as well.
Yeah, yeah, and also I think this is the point where you can think about, Warren Buffett's focus on long-term competitive advantages and this whole concept of, I want to buy a business that I can protect for a long time. But the more you have engineered a model that can endure time and threat, the better. So if we stick to that way we've always done it versus what is the strongest, most defensible path and model we can create, so that we're generating for the longest period of time the greatest amount of value to our client or to our customer. That's what we're looking for.
Now, I'm going to make a very clear sort of commercial statement about birthing giants because of what you just said. There's all sorts of ways one can go about reimagining and experimenting with their model. There's all sorts of ways to do it, and there's all sorts of groups to do it. But at Birthing Giants, that's what we're obsessed with. We call it value proposition transformation. How do you deliver value? And we believe that there's, by the way, it's not rocket science. It's just you got to surround yourself with really smart people who have done it before. And you've got to create a kind of a safe space where you can experiment and be thoughtful and check in with your peers and see how they're doing it. And then, and only then, sort of engage your leadership team, your management team to help you execute. So we think of it as these 3 tiers. You need these experts who've been there and done that. You need these peers who are doing it. And then you need these people to help you get it done.
Yeah.
And that's the environment we've created in Birthing a Giant. So it's really designed for this. It's maximized around this concept.
Yeah, I love it. I love thinking about that through the lens of curiosity. I don't want just my own curiosity. I want the benefit of, like you said, the experts, the peers, and even my teams or the people supporting me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now talk a bit about market. And so our friend Doug Tatum, who is he's a critical, maybe the primary author of the 4Ms. I mean, he is certainly the author of the 4Ms for sure. His great, wonderful book called No Man's Land. But even just the kind of bucketing of these things he's done a lot of great work around that. He once described market to me as this: when you go from customers to markets.
Mm-hmm.
So you might have started, I often use the example of a catering company. And you serve, let's say 20 corporate clients in your region, and they're your customers. And when one of them says, I want you to start making food that uses this cuisine or is sort of based on this concept, you pretty much say, okay, yes, I will do it, because that's how you treat customers. But markets are when you say, I'm going to buckle this down and optimize my system around these menu items in that example.
Mm-hmm.
You can't go to McDonald's and say, I'll take a burger medium rare, please. They don't know how to handle that request. I'm not sure it's meat to begin with, but that's another matter. But you can't, make that request there because their system says, we don't treat you like that. You get what we have. We've boiled it down to these offerings. So what I did appreciate about Tatum's explanation about markets and customers versus markets is there's a kind of entrepreneur who says, if you ask me to do it, I'm going to move heaven and earth to do it. A kind of business that does that. And then there's a different kind of business that's probably better suited for scale and for de-risking and for optimization that says, we have identified a market. We've figured out their needs, and we're going to do that all day long. And that's what we do. We don't do anything outside of that. We do not jump when they say how high. We do not make their burger medium rare. We offer them the same product, the same menu, the same thing. Is that your take on what market is as well?
Yeah. In my mind and in my conversations, I always go right to the first point of, I've got to have something that's predictable, high margin, repeatable. I'm building a sales engine, so if I have a sales engine, it doesn't require me. It doesn't require a salesperson. It is an engine that is solving for a very specific purpose, and it's high performing, right? And very predictable. You can fuel it You can drive lots of, marketing or increased resources into it. And on the other side, you will be generating more and more, in this case, profit from that sales engine. So yeah, I'm a big believer that you can really press the accelerator and value lever when you decide you're going to build engines and not kingdoms.
In the Birthing a Giants program, I will say, when we get these business owners together and we work through this concept of market, one of the things we do is it's a relatively simple exercise. You can do it on your own. It's harder to do unless you're pressured to do it, which is there's really two things going on inside your business that affect this. One is what products do you sell and how profitable or not profitable are each of those products, and what customers do you serve and how easy or hard is it to serve them.
Yeah.
And you just said, high margin, high volume, right? We should want to sell the most profitable products to the clients who are the easiest to work with, or it's the best fit for what they need.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you do that analysis, you'll sometimes realize, well, this product has high revenue but lousy profit, and this customer is high revenue but also grinds so hard at us that it makes it less profitable. And if you cut those out, you can end up with less revenue overall, but a lot more profit.
Yeah. Yeah. Be sure when you're looking at, where your honey holes are or things that aren't performing well, that you're looking at where time is spent. That is such a big cost in your business.
Yeah. So and that feeds into capital markets and de-risking. Every one of these 4Ms feed into each other. They're broken out, but they're also fully connected like a jigsaw puzzle. Well, so with our remaining time, I just thought, let me zip through the last three steps just so we know where we are on the continuum. But just to be clear, we started with step one, which is profits, revenues, and exit prices. That's sort of on the mind of every business owner out there. We moved to step two, which is the three-legged stool. Everything's a mixture of cash, labor, and technology. And every business is a different mix of those three things. We spent most of our time, thank you, Eric, for talking about these four levers in step three, which really are the levers that move the business. And you could spend a lifetime just mastering these in your business. And frankly, this is what a business owner should be doing all day long, is these four M's. So let me just skip on just real quickly to some things that are very Birthing a Giant specific, which we call 1 year from today, which is, your team is executing on the next 12 months. But someone, it's the owner, it's the visionary of the business, who's supposed to be thinking about the year after that. What do we want to get done 1 year from today? Mm-hmm. The bigger stuff, the more visionary stuff, the stuff where the fortunes of the company can possibly change if we get traction. And so that's 1 year from today, which, as I mentioned earlier, is really a team effort, meaning the experts who are there to help you, the peers who are riding this journey with you, and the leadership team which will help you execute. Then we have what we call strategy stacking, which is basically you take those 1 year from today's 1 year after another, and it's amazing how 3 years later you can have fully transformed your value proposition once you take it in 1 year chunks the way we have. And we also use something called the Buffett benchmark, which, Eric, I'd love to hear your thoughts on. But the 1 year from today is looking forward, meaning I think we'll do this. I want to try to do that. Let's see if we can do that. The Buffett benchmark is a backwards looking vehicle that was popular. Warren Buffett used it, and I'll ask you to reflect on that. But it's not. I think we could have. Here's what we did. It's facts, right? We hired this person. We introduced this product. We opened this new market. It's all facts. And I think the power of strategy stacking is when you're spending some time saying, here's what we're going to do. That's the future. And here's what we did. And using those two together so that they don't feel like they're totally disconnected. Mm-hmm. After all, your 1 year from today should be based on things that you're good at from past performance. Okay. But what's your take on using the past as an indicator of the future of the Buffett benchmark, that kind of thing?
Yeah, we always want to learn from the past to be better tomorrow. 100%. The Buffett benchmark, the focus on not just your income statement, but also your balance sheet. And those things are paramount to understand. Are we creating value? Are we growing the value of our business? or maybe taken a few hits, and let's learn from that so we can course correct and do great things in the future.
Yeah, and there's so much to be learned in that exercise. Again, a business owner has a hard time doing this unless there's a group of people around them who say, this is what we're about, this is what we're here for. And then I'll just close with the last step of the 6 in total value proposition transformation. And I often say it this way, and I'd love to hear what you think, Eric, is that actually step 6 should actually be step 1, because you should actually know where you're headed so that all your work around strategy helps you get there. And so step 6 is, do you want to be a small giant, which is sort of a company that, you have your hands around, you like running, but you don't necessarily care you don't really have a mind towards selling it one day. A big giant where you want to make it bigger and you're going to fuel it with capital market partnership, sometimes called a platform company. And a giant exit, which is where you really want to exit in X numbers of years. And in capital markets term, they'll often call that an add-on or a tuck-in. But then either way, these 6 steps apply the same. Particularly the 4 M's apply. They just you'd apply them differently, right? If you were doing it towards the goal of a small giant, a big giant, or giant exit. Same 4 M's, model, market management, and money, but they apply differently based on these different outcomes. What's your thoughts on outcomes generally?
Yeah, I love starting with the end game in mind, or the outcomes we're pursuing, because it's a rally point. It helps us drive clarity first in our own minds, which is really important as business owners, but also with our teams. And so talking a lot about who we're likely to become is really, really important. And it's going to change a lot of the decisions we make along the way, depending on what outcome we're most likely pursuing. And the other nice thing is we can change our minds. There's nothing wrong with changing our future vision, but not having one does not drive clarity across our decision making.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Eric, we're going to end it there with our friends who joined us, maybe during a lunch break or something like that. But I want to make this really clear. Methodology, framework, like the 6 steps to a bigger business, they are so important because they provide clarity. But it's a faculty of people like you we always call you the been there, done that crowd that, can see around the corners, see over the hills, that accelerate progress. And the thing that I have become very passionate about myself over the years is I would always have described myself as a school of hard knocks graduate. And I've always said that with pride, because a lot of our entrepreneurship, you learn along the way by making mistakes. But I have come to realize that there's a certain amount of ego or hubris in that statement, because part of it is the chest beating of like, I can handle it, I can take it. The truth is, I think future entrepreneurs are going to say, show me the framework so that I don't have to waste as much time or hit my head on as many ceilings. Show me the framework that will get me farther faster. And the answer is going to be by spending time with people like you who have been there and done that. And these entrepreneurs who come to Birthing of Giants, I mean, they're always lifelong learners. That's just their mentality. So that lifelong learner can learn from people like you, and they can make faster progress with less bumps on their head, less time wasted. And I just think that that's the ultimate appeal of the 6 steps to a bigger business.
Yeah, it's a great outcome. We'll achieve more than we can imagine.
Yes. Well, thanks for your time, Eric, and thanks for being a valued part of our community. And thanks for sharing some of your wisdom with the audience today.
All right. It's great to be here.